We're live now. Okay. Finals week 1. We're back
Oh,
again. Oh, the light just switched off, did it?
it's gone off. Okay, it's back on.
You're back. Oh, that's
We're good.
No, it's a welcome addition. I think welcome addition.
Good.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Rest. I'm your host, Darius Matakos, as I fix my lights because I realize it's a little bit too dim. But we're back again. First week of finals has come and gone. A lot to review, a lot to cover. Considering the events that happened, especially last night on the whole tribunal stuff, which I'm sure we'll touch on, as well as all 4 games. But first, as always, I'm joined by Nathan, my lovely co-host. How are you, my friend?
Good. Nervous, good. It's weird. It's very odd talking about your club at this time of the year. Just feels weird. It's just different. Because it just feels like it's, your normal home and away season if you Carlton are still involved in the conversation. But we're here and we keep going and a lot of football. And it's honestly tiring me out a little bit in complete honesty, but it's nearing the pointy end. So it's exciting football at the very least.
Yeah, well, you obviously travel around the state to watch NAB League or Talent League. Talent League? It's Talent League, isn't it?
Talent League now, yeah.
Yeah, Talent League stuff. Any expeditions over the weekend? Post celebrations?
Yeah. GMHBA on a Sunday, which, was okay. It was my first time in the stadium. I've been around it like 3 or 4 times. I've just gone to see it. But it was the first time being in it. Yeah, one of the weirdest stadiums.
More strange stadiums, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've never felt so close to the centre circle in my life. Like, you're there. Like, it's just there. It's over there. You could point and say it's right there. So that was a little odd. Big Geelong turnout for when the Falcons played. That was quite loud. But prelims are set for boys and girls now. So,
Lovely.
pointy end of the season.
Lovely. Well, there's a couple of comments before we kick things off. Chills. Evening, my friend. When was the last time, when we make it a winner, bold, back-to-back grand final winners with brothers from opposite teams? That is a great stat. If I want to find that, because my mind goes to obviously the Scott brothers, but they obviously were on different teams. Well, they're on the same team. That would be fascinating to find that. You know what? I'm going to look for that. I'm actually going to look for that after this show. So maybe this time next week you can remind me and I'll see if I've got it. And then obviously Owen is back in the chat with some selection issues about the days. We'll touch on that when we touch on the preview towards the end of the show. But let's kick things off. Let's just go straight ahead and we'll go with let's start straight ahead with Thursday night. Obviously a lot to speak about, as well as both on the field and off the field. You went experiences.
Yep.
Experiences we touched on pre-show. You want to give an abridged version of?
I'll give a G-rated version, but I was not loving it. I'm all for passionate supporters, right? And passion's everything, but I think there is a line, and it was maybe just crossed. To the point where it's
from the Collingwood faithful.
You take from it what you will. You can believe what you want, but there was a line that was probably crossed to the point where I was. Yeah, I mean, fair play gets them over the line. It's a big factor, but if you're an opposition supporter, you're not loving your time there. In all honesty, unless you win in, you're surrounded. And you just got to cop it. But fair play. It gets them over the line.
It does, and it's hostile to say the least.
Yes.
So, it's hostile to say the least. So a lot of chatter in the comments about the Maynard decision. I feel like do you want to start with that, get it out of the way, because we don't like speaking about MRO stuff because it's a pain. Let's obviously get that out of the way. So obviously the big issue coming out from the week was the Brayden Maynard hit, shoulder, block, tackle, whatever, attempted smother on Angus Brayshaw. Early on in the game, left Angus Brayshaw off the ground in a stretcher. Brandon Maynard was reported rather, on the ground. I'm 90% sure. Michael Christian, the MRO guy, initially said nothing to see here. Laura Kane, the new AFL GM or the new AFL footy boss, stepped in and was like, nope, this is going to the tribunal. Went to the tribunal. And after 4 hours, Brandon Maynard was got off. Being at the ground, you have a first-hand experience. Did you see it live? Were you looking at the ball? Did you see the hit? What was the reaction? Etc. Etc. The whole 9 yards regarding that, being at the ground.
Well, no, I didn't see the hit because I watched the kick. So I just generally missed the kick, and I was kind of in line with where it was in the end, but I was just sort of looking forward and didn't pay attention. You heard the crowd sort of go off, and their response was classy, in the nice words, to start booing him for whatever reason. I don't know why you boo a bloke on the ground. Maybe that's not what they're booing, but it certainly felt like it when they did the replay. So it was a little odd. But yeah, it was not until quarter time where I actually saw the replay, which instinctively I thought, well, that's just weeks due to the outcome. It was I didn't watch it, I just sort of quickly saw it, moved on, and then when I got home, I got to see it properly. But yeah, it was just a weird reaction. It kind of changed the crowd quite a lot. It was just the intensity lifted a little bit of awkwardness sort of around, and it was a bit odd. It was just a little bit odd, especially the whole cheering Maynard thing every time that he touched the ball. I just I understand it, but it's whether he meant it or not, he's knocked a guy out. You cannot it was awkward. That's what I mean. It was just an awkward environment where it's you're just cheering him to drown out the boos, but
you're cheering out of spite.
Yeah, it was just a little weird. It was a little weird. But,
watching it from home, the reaction was quite concerning, I would say, and a bit strange. I don't think Angus Brayshaw will play again this year, regardless of Melbourne's season. I honestly hope he doesn't play this year because he was unconscious for 2 minutes, and there is more to life than football, especially considering his concussion history. So yeah, it will be interesting to see the reception. It'll be interesting to see that. It would be interesting to see the reception should Angus Brayshaw play again, and should Angus Brayshaw play against Collingwood again, because I'm not one to sit here and say what will happen. We can all use our brains and think about what could happen if he does play Collingwood again, and it's going to be hostile, to say the least, which, I mean, is one of those things, right? But what were your... So, yeah, it was one of those... Watching from home, I think it was very much based on precedent and based on the outcome, I thought he would get weeks. I mean, there's comments in here, accidental, as simple as that. Yes, accidental, his intention was not to bump, it was to smother. I agree. I don't think he definitely didn't go out there he wasn't lining up Brayshaw from the square and was trying to clean him up. He did go for the ball. However, I do think a lot of other accidental things have been suspended. I mean, Jordan Boyd got 3 weeks for a tackle. So there was no intention behind that except to actually tackle. So I don't really think intent. I don't think intent is a fair argument, but Collingwood did their due diligence within the whole tribunal act or within the whole tribunal process and got him off. So your initial reaction was weeks, yeah?
It was it was just weak, honestly. I didn't look at it and think weeks, because you take into account, like you said, it's do they ever follow precedent? Not really. I just thought, okay, he's knocked a guy out, just punish the outcome. We say a week because, yes, I know I doubt he had the intention to go and knock him out. I don't see why he would have wanted to do that. But you can't just walk away and say, well, that's all right. You might accidentally knock a guy out, but go on. I just thought a week is you learn your lesson, you move on. Simple enough. You don't miss a grand final if they make it. That was my initial reaction.
Yeah, I think. Look, I agree. I think it should have been. Look, it's tricky. If I could control everything, right? Which obviously I can't. If I could, I'd give Maynard a week, right? If I could disregard the current tribunal rules and the current rules around suspending people, I would give Maynard a week because yes, he didn't intend to bump, he didn't intend to do anything, but his actions knocked a player unconscious for 2 minutes. As the light goes again, just leave it off. It's fine. Okay, it's back.
It's the computer, my bad. But
okay, it's fine. His actions knocked the player out, so I think you have to punish that. Knocked him out for 2 minutes. 2 minutes. It was pretty bad. So I would have given him 1 week. However, because of the AFL's box ticking kind of process is, you can't give him 1 week because that's not how it works, which is tricky because it put it in a position where he was either 0 weeks or 3+, which is like, okay. I went to the tribunal. So when it happened, my initial thought was weeks, and then I thought about it, and I thought, if I was to pick this, how I think it should unfold, I think it should go to the tribunal, and I think Collingwood should be able to get him off, and that's exactly what happened. So I think the way it all panned out, or the way the whole thing played out, was, in my opinion, the right outcome. But that's only because of the way that the tribunal is set up. If the tribunal allowed for nuance, and if the tribunal allowed for vibe, and for and not being a pure box ticking mechanism, I think he should have got a week. But that's not how it works, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the way you sum that up, I'd agree. I still think there's just no way he should have gotten off for that. It's just in terms of like the message. What's that saying? Like, what's that telling? If you're a player, like, I mean, there's so many inconsistencies, and that's why we just don't talk about it. Because, like you say, you look at Boyd and you look at the Sicily thing. It's like, well, what is a punishable act and what's not?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then in this case, that's not. It's like, well,
yeah.
Then you might as well go in for every ball and hope, just, well, it was an accident. It was a football act. I knocked him out, but I was just trying to tackle him.
I was just trying to smother, or I was just trying to do anything. Yeah.
It's like it's laughable,
Yeah.
Not then this like just regarding the player, the team, everything. It's just this is like ridiculous because I feel like across every sport, well, AFL is the only one where it's just this like you don't actually know what you're gonna. Yeah, a lot of grey area. So
a lot of grey. A lot of comments in the art from Lou. If it wasn't Brayshaw, there wouldn't be this much drama about it. I don't agree. I think any player in that position puts any player that's been knocked out of the ground for 2 minutes. There's going to be talk around it. Lynch got off with a similar incident. He did, although I would retort that by saying that was a marking contest. So I think there are definitely different rules around it being a marking contest. Realistically, Brayshaw was within his right to smother. Is he within his right to jump? Who knows? Is there a duty of care there? Who knows? Brandon, yeah. My week is very good, my friend. What about yours?
Yeah, good week.
Good week, great week, superb week. But I think any final thoughts, feelings? Were you happy with the way Laura Kane went about it? Obviously, overruling the initial decision by Michael Christian, and kind of overthrowing that, and basically, obviously, Michael Christian not wanting it to go to the tribunal, and Laura Kane basically saying, "Nope, this is going to the tribunal," stepping into her role and stamping her authority down straight away. What are your thoughts on that?
Good on her, but at the same time, well, clearly she wanted weeks. Why would you do that if you didn't want an outcome that involved weeks? So it feels a bit redundant in the end to have done that. But it's a great initiative. I'm glad that's happening, but obviously it's just sort of looks a bit silly now. It's like, well, okay, they didn't even bother punishing it anyway. So
obviously the AFL have come out and decided not to appeal the decision. I can't remember the last time they did appeal the decision. I know they appealed when Bashahuli knocked out Jed Lamb ages and ages ago. They appealed that. Um, were you surprised they did appeal? Were you surprised they didn't appeal? Were you like, do you not have an opinion on it?
No, I don't really. I don't even know what happens if they would appeal. In all honesty, so I was
Yeah,
not shocked.
yeah,
Like I don't know how you'd get. Like I understand appeals in real life court things, but in the AFL thing, what's that even mean? Like, what's that
yeah,
involve? And I don't think it would have changed the outcome. And that's probably why they didn't want to, because if you've, for 4 hours, if you hadn't come to the right conclusion after then how long would it take, really?
yeah, yeah. Um, the AFL, yes, the AFL has declined to appeal. They don't care about the head. I say this is obviously I kind of half agree with this sentiment in a way because overall the AFL are the overall governing body, right? And they are the
Yeah.
overall governing power, so they can really do whatever they want. I think the AFL do care about the head because if they didn't care about the head, they wouldn't send it to the tribunal. If they didn't care about that, they wouldn't send it to the tribunal. They allowed it. That they did, in my opinion, they did they did the correct thing. They sent it to the tribunal because it allowed for both sides to argue their case. It allowed for a semblance of justice for Brayshaw and his family. It also allowed Collingwood to argue and to plead their case. And in my opinion, the correct outcome was brought. I don't think it was a cut and dry zero. I don't think it was a cut and dry three. I think it was very 50-50. And if it was given 3 weeks, I'd be like, okay, fair enough. If it was given 4 weeks, I'd be like, okay, fair enough. Similarly, it's been given zero. So I'm like, okay, fair enough. Probably the right decision. Um, yeah, like Owen says here, I don't think intent is a cause here because the sling tackle is rarely intentional. Yeah, people get work, so I agree for that. So yeah, it is one of those things where it is one of those things where you just where it comes and goes, and we're going to be here speaking about another incident, I'm sure. So yeah,
Yeah.
like I think moving on to the actual game, um, moving on to the game itself, what was your kind of feeling being at the game? Collingwood get off to a good start. Melbourne claw their way back, and it was one of the more wasteful games I've ever seen an AFL football team play. It was really really wasteful from Melbourne. Really.
Oh, weirdly, I thought the right result happened. And maybe that's just because Melbourne they just were not clinical whatsoever. And it was like, well, if you can't convert your chances and you're getting quite a few of them, you just don't deserve to win. Like, bad
Yeah.
kicking's bad football type. So I didn't leave thinking, wow, Melbourne really, they lost out on that one. And it felt like my initial after quarter time, I just thought they came in really unprepared. They just didn't seem like they were ready to tackle what Collingwood were going to bring to them, and they let Collingwood dictate terms. And it still felt like that the whole time. It felt like when Melbourne were on top, it was momentum swings rather than they were sort of dictating the play, because even in transition, Collingwood, you always just think straight away they're going to score.
Yeah.
So whether, I just thought momentum was all Melbourne were hanging on to at times. Yeah, definitely frustrating. They really just couldn't convert. I still feel like even if they got closer, Collingwood would have just kept them at a big distance, because in the end, Melbourne, they only got it to 7 points with a couple minutes left. Like, they were still down by a few goals for most of the game, and it was pretty similar to Friday night in the end, where there was always this sort of comfortable-ish sitting margin, and kind of Collingwood were just clinical, and
Yeah.
they did the job. They prepared well, and Melbourne, yeah, their forward entries was just a talking point on its own. It was unbelievably bad. Like, that's when it sort of in terms of preparation, you just have to shake your head at what they were doing there. The same thing again and again and again, and don't understand why it took so long for them to change it. And they never really did change it. They sort of moved, lowered their eyes at the end of that third quarter and gave themselves somewhat of a chance. Otherwise, it was just a poorly prepared performance, and I think it was the right result in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think a lot can be attributed to Brenda does say they can't win in the wet. It was, I think, weather played a factor, not as big of a factor as what we thought it was going to play for both Thursday and Friday night. I think it did play a factor, but not a big kind of game deciding factor. I think it has to go down to Melbourne's forward line, like you said. I think the game was lost forward half of the ground for Melbourne, and I hesitate very much to speak, considering where we're going to be in 2 days' time, which I can't believe we're in a semi-final, but that's anyways. Yeah, so I hesitate to speak. Melbourne are obviously a great side, and I was actually listening to the Tradies podcast, big fan, today, and Sam McClure made a great point about Melbourne's forward line. He said, what side in the comp has two of the top five midfielders in the comp being paid over 850, 900k a year? Two of the top five best key backs in the comp being paid over 750, 800k a year, and two of the best ruckmen in the comp being paid similar money. So they are so strong in other areas of the ground, and they have actually done really well in the past with their forward line. They've got Ben Brown off nothing, and he kicked goals for them in that premiership year. Bailey Fritsch has been a superb find from the draft. He's been exceptional for a couple of years. Tom McDonald has transformed his career. Jacob Van Rooyen has come in, won't play on Friday night, unfortunately, because of his quite clear-cut suspension. I don't think there's too much debate in that. But he's still a baby. He's going to be very good. They've moved Joel Smith forward, and he's become a target. So I don't think we can all look at this and be like when Carlton's forward line was dysfunctional. I think we could, as the media and as fans, we look at it and think, how is this dysfunctional because of the talent that they've got? Melbourne are a very much a team that got a lot out of not a lot, and I think sometimes it comes back to bite them a little bit. But it comes back to bite them a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see what they do forward of centre this week. Obviously, no Van Rooyen, so he'll come out. A lot of talk has been, I think Owen mentioned it at the very, very start, if I can bring up this comment. Yeah, Daniel Turner. A lot of talk about him coming in and playing forward. Some people saying you move Joel Smith forward and move Tomlinson back, or bring Tomlinson in and move him back. Saying Petrarca permanent forward. And then, like he says here, Track and Cozzy 50-50 forward and mid. Neil Bullimore on the ball. So yeah, it's going to be a big selection out for Melbourne. But yeah, I think it was lost in their forward half of the ground. It was just a lot of doing the same thing over and over again. And Darcy Moore and Nathan Murphy was just marking everything. It was annoying to see from a neutral supporter, because it was like, please do it. And even some of their decision making, like Bailey Fritsch has a set shot 35 out directly in front, and they go and they play on and they miss from the play on. So yeah, just a real disappointing kind of game from Melbourne. As well. And then the big elephant in the room, which I want to touch on here. Grundy, does he play forward? Does he not? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Well, any final thoughts on the Thursday night game regarding both teams?
I think if you're Collingwood, you've got a spot in the grand final.
Book your grand final tickets.
I think they look weak at times, and there's easily areas to beat them in. Yeah, but we'll touch on later. A Port Giant, especially Port Adelaide, they're not going to go to the MCG and win. Not even a chance. They couldn't go to the Gabba and get close. So, anyways, and if you're Melbourne, I wouldn't lose all confidence. The whole straight sets in. I guess it's the whole fear, and they've definitely got the pressure on them. But we'll again previews later. You're playing a team who's just spent themselves in an elimination final. You match up really well against them, so it's not all gloom and doom. But they do need to actually play some good football to win a grand final. Like they do sort of have to play a very good game to give them any confidence. So, yeah, that's my wrap up.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, game of the week. Let's go. Let's do it.
Let's move on. Yes, just quickly, Collingwood book your grand final tickets. I did say last week, whoever wins this game will win the grand final. So it is what it is.
I thought you were talking about our game for a sec. I was like,
no.
I don't remember, but fair enough.
No. Let's speak about Friday night. Wow, that happened, didn't it? That happened.
Yeah, it did. And it was
It certainly happened.
I can't believe we won it, given how much time there was left in that fourth quarter, and
Where we were
the
just
margin was 8 points, 14
yeah,
minutes. It was just. But weirdly, it was nearly identical to when we played them last year. Like, I think we were at a margin of like 15 or like 13 for all of like 10 minutes, and just
yeah.
nothing happened. And
And then Fisher kicked that goal late, similar to Vic
yeah,
as
which
well.
was Blake Acres. And,
What a
Blake
man.
Acres, Jeff Garlett, nicely together. It was, yeah, it was. And I said this to you, I didn't feel like I was as excited final siren compared to the Melbourne game a couple of weeks ago, just because it's like this one, you were expected to win it, really. And you've got a week afterwards. The Melbourne game, we lost. There's a good chance we don't have, that might have lost finals for all we know, etc.
Yeah. So
it was great.
Sorry to interrupt. You can continue just after this. I was speaking to a friend of mine, and I explained the same reasoning. I was like, I don't feel like the Melbourne game felt different after the siren. He said, "Well, the job's not done. Like when we beat Melbourne, the job at that stage was done. We had made finals.
Yeah.
That was the job. We had tick. So then it was that calming, that just relief of we're there, and that's where all the excitement just burst from 80,000 to G, right? Whereas now the job's not done. We've moved the goalpost, and now it's we won one final, let's go win another one type thing. So yeah.
Well, look, I'll start on the Swans tune, and we'll start with them. Two players I think worthy of a good discussion: Errol Gulden, Hayden McLean.
Freak. Errol is a freak.
Yeah, that was nuts.
So good. He's going to win their BNF by that far. Like, he's so good. I can't get over how good he is, man.
But he's just a game winner. Like, that's a player who really could have won them the game, and I know he nearly did. But like in terms of it was almost there. Like, and then Hayden McLean, I thought, tore us a new one.
Yeah, a much maligned player, especially among Swan supporters. Playing as that second ruck, key forward, second ruck, marking everything down the line. Really, really dominated Jacob Wiedering, especially high up the ground. I think Wiedering did well to drop back as that spare defender and really dominate from that area. But when he was in those one-on-one contests down the line, Hayden McLean certainly held his own. I just think it was similar to the night before with Melbourne, forward to centre. It just never clicked for them, and I think maybe that was something to do with how well Jacob Wiedering was playing. Obviously, they moved Luke Parker on Jacob Wiedering in the second half. He kicked 2 goals and nearly won the game. Like I wasn't prepared for that move as a supporter. I wasn't prepared for that move as a supporter. I didn't know what they would do. I thought maybe if they'd moved anyone deep forward, it'd be Papley. I didn't think it'd be Parker, and he popped up with 2 goals and, like I said, nearly won the game. So the Swans can hold their head up after that, especially from where they came from this year. On another day, they win it. They were very wasteful. Joel Amadi missed the easy set shot quite early on. McLean missed an easy set shot. Papley missed one later in the game, and then of course those two Blake Acres hand to God moments, which on literally any other given day, that's 2 goals, and all of a sudden there's a 3, 4, 5 goal swing. So yeah, the Swans can hold their head up pretty proud after that game and their season. I don't think they should be too discouraged, especially from where they came from.
Yeah, I'd agree. You could also say on any other given day that Harry Mackay kicks those 2 goals, and the game is over much earlier than it really is. So
yeah,
I think both teams were equally as wasteful, weirdly, just in, I think, different ways. And
yeah,
it was. Oh, look, it would be biased to say it was the fitting result, but when you look at the sort of that dominance patches, it was probably the right result, and it was just a good end for obvious reasons. It was it was odd. It was just, and again, it was an odd feeling to know it's like, oh, week 2, and I don't think we played this. I don't think we've been alive for the last time we played a semi in Melbourne. We've been interstate the last 2 ones. So I think that was the thing as well. It's like, it's a thing of, oh, wow, we can actually beat the next team, rather than it's, okay, you got to go to Sydney or Perth and win over there, which always feels like a daunting task. This one, it's like, oh, well, there's every possibility, every chance. But that's it. It's happened, but there's, as you said, it's not finished, and a lot more football. And our mood. How weird to think that in the space of a week we might just win an elimination final, but also have our season ended like really crushingly and just hate football again.
Well, let's speak about that. With all due respect to the next, I just want to caveat this. With all due respect to Jeddah, St Kilda, Port Adelaide, and Brisbane, your games weren't really that much, though. That a lot of talking points. So we might just digress into this a little bit more, if we're allowed.
Well, do you want to preview Melbourne Carlton now, given we've just talked the two games?
Yeah, okay, we'll do that. Yeah, that works actually.
Yeah,
that's a nice structure. Yeah, let's preview Melbourne Carlton now. Yeah, so obviously Sydney eliminated the Pies, obviously through to a prelim. Pies through to a prelim. They will play the winner of the Giants Port, which I'm sure we'll touch on a little bit later. Thoughts, feelings, emotions from a Carlton supporter perspective, from an objective perspective. Say Blue Bagger in here saying, I think Melbourne won't kick a winning score with their forward line. Well, I mean, we did touch on that. It's obviously very depleted. Thoughts, feelings, emotions.
Okay, thoughts, feelings, emotions. Thoughts, Carlton should win it on paper, just based off form line. I mean, 10 of the last 11 games. Melbourne, a lot of like external and internal issues, I feel like. There's just a bit more going on there. A lot more pressure on this game. I feel that Carlton will be spent. And I don't think it will be a blowout. I don't think they won't turn up for 4 quarters. I just think Melbourne, well, there was a lot on the line, but obviously you're not playing for your season. So I just wonder, first time in 10 years, if that, the physical output they would have had to put out in the end, and it'll be interesting. And it's probably something we talk about, like in terms of starting the game well. Not that it has mattered really when Carlton and Melbourne play. It feels like it could be 2 goals each way and it will still be competitive. So I'm not really on the board of like whoever starts well wins this. I just think it'd be a fun midfield battle, this one, because it's a different team to a couple of weeks ago. And I think there's a lot more choices with Melbourne in this game. Like you said, with your Petrarcas, they play forward. Like there's a lot more decisions that could either positively benefit them, but it could also like ruin their night very quickly if they don't make the right choices. Carlton's Carlton. They don't change a lot. So that's just the first initial thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've been on the ball on the eye of Twitter, but apparently Jackson One has not passed his fitness test.
I've not looked. That is interesting.
Up the baggers has some sources, so he's normally quite reliable. So let's sit here on the assumption that Jackson Vardy will not play. Yeah. From a Carlton perspective, do you think that means Matt Kennedy will come in and play forward?
You don't understand. I want this so badly. I love Matt Kennedy. I want 2019 half forward Matt Kennedy. That was absolutely coming from 2 or 3 back and
4 goals against the Suns at Marvel.
I think exactly. I think that can win you a football game, because who is going to expect him to play well if you've come off little football? No one will talk about him. He'll just go under the radar. Probably not. I mean, you'd be stupid not to. But I'm just, you just assume there's not going to be that focus. So yes, I'd love to see it. JSOS would be equally as valuable.
Of course.
Actually, no. I think Kennedy's more valuable in this type of game. That's a big call. Not saying JSOS isn't. I'm just saying in terms of this, I'd do anything to see Matt Kennedy in this game.
Yeah,
I just think it could. I think it could make that much of a difference.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a comment here. Yeah, Blue Bug. I'm not taking anything away from the D's. There's a solid team, but I think we have more firepower up front. That's an interesting statement, because on paper, you think that we would do. Charlie Curnow, obviously. Probably the arguably the best player on the ground, full stop, let alone in the forward half for either team. I would argue their defence is slightly better than ours. Maylever, Salem. Who's that other one that they've got? Hibbard. They've got a very strong defensive structure. So do us. So do we, in fairness. However, their forward line, will be Fritsch, Pickett, Grundy, maybe. Joel Smith, maybe. Turner, maybe, depending on who they go with. They've got, obviously, Gawn can float forward and take a couple. He's probably the best forward ruck on the ground, I'd say. I'd slightly say he's slightly better forward of centre than Tom DeConnie. He's certainly better forward of centre than Mark Pitney. They've got like Kay Chandler, Alex Neil-Bullard, these type of players. So I don't think their forward line, especially when it hits the deck, is as bad as what a lot of people say it is. I'd argue that ours probably on paper is slightly better. We've probably kicked more goals in our forward line throughout the year than their forward line would have. However, I don't think it's going to... Yeah, obviously, Jay says Sparrow as well. I don't think our forward line will blow their forward line apart. I think our midfields are quite evenly balanced. I think our defensive structures are quite evenly balanced. I think it's going to be a really interesting game. And I will touch on the point that you said before. I do worry about Carlton's fitness heading into this game. I do think... I mean, when you look at the last couple of games that Carlton played throughout the year, they had to slog it out against St Kilda. And they did come in with a wet sail there, but they held on for dear life against Melbourne. Like, absolutely held on for dear life. The next week against the Suns, they had to claw their way back from 40 points down. And then against the Giants, one of those games, right? And then, of course, last week, they held on for dear life. I don't know. I think I do kind of concede your point in a way of saying I do worry about our fitness and about how fit we will be getting into the game.
Well, you could also look at it from a Melbourne 2018 point of view. I mean, it happened to them, but they got 2 weeks deep. Well, 3 weeks, but 2 wins in.
Two wins deep, yeah.
I mean, adrenaline will play a big part in that as well. You know, when you're out there, it's going to be a Carlton crowd. It's like, does play into your hands, and that's something actually that gave me confidence on Friday night being at Collingwood's game. I was like, okay, the crowd literally wins you the game here. Like, no matter how much momentum Melbourne have, all Collingwood's crowd has to do is turn on, and it's like swings again. So that's one thing I think that it plays a big factor. Yeah, it could go either way. Actually, the last thing I want to touch on the bet was just sort of back to your point on the forward line. I think Melbourne have a few more selfish forwards. You look at Pickett and Fritsch, they love their moments and they will do anything to kick a goal themselves. But not all the time. Like, that's not their main trait, but they do have a habit, especially Pickett on Thursday night.
Tendencies, yeah.
Just some shots. Yeah. Some shots that just didn't need to be had at some points. So it's not like a negative. It doesn't really affect them as bad as what I'd probably make it sound like. But that's just a difference point.
Whereas when you look at Carlton's forward line, you have Matt Owies trying to handball it to Charlie Curnow from -3 meters out. It was practically in the goal and handballed backwards, which I guess is just a funny juxtaposition, I guess. But
tip. What's our tip?
Don't do this to me.
Actually, what happened last week with our tips?
I didn't keep track. Surely you remember.
I don't really. Well, look, not that you're ever going to come back, but
I think it's physically impossible, considering that there's only like. We both had Collingwood, right? No, I had Melbourne,
and I had Collingwood.
Okay, I had Carlton, you had Sydney.
Yeah, so 1-1.
We both had the Saints.
Yep, and then we both had Brisbane.
So what?
It's whatever.
Yeah, 2-2. Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Got to go Melbourne.
15, George, Alistair says Carlton by 16.
Well, Melbourne by... This is under 2 goals again. Melbourne by 10.
I'll go with Carlton by... I really want this to be quite convincing. Not 10-goal convincing, but 3-goal convincing for purely my heart rate and my blood pressure sake. Head thinking I'll go with Carlton by... Carlton by 7 points.
There we go.
Carlton by 7. I'm getting really nervous thinking about this game. Can we... Let's move on. Can we move on?
We've got 20 minutes. 10 for the reviews, 10 for the previews.
There we go. Before we start, new member, Cal Golby. Thank you very much, my friend. New member of the channel.
Welcome.
All right. GWS St Kilda, you were there for some reason. Take it away.
Oh well, some reason. I mean, family. That's mum's side St Kilda. Look, they were louder than what I thought. They were said there was 68,000. I don't believe that number personally. I do not think there was 68K. It didn't look like it, but if there was, fair play. That's pretty big number. Struggled to believe it was a finals atmosphere at times, but that's probably just because of the way the Saints were travelling. It was weird. I think we touched on it in the preview. It was like, this is not a finals game in terms of like, why are these teams at the MCG on a Saturday afternoon elimination fight? Like, it was just all weird. But yeah, Giants were terrific, but I also think Saints were super bad.
Giants were clean.
So I'm not downplaying. I'm not downplaying what the Giants did. I just thought St Kilda were also really bad. That simply they were just handing it to you to do as well as what they did. But Giants were still very, very good. Like, not taking that away. Very impressive. But Saints didn't really turn up. Like, that's just sort of that's the reality.
Yeah. The Giants are just so clean. Like, I'm watching these plays. Tom Green, obviously Cornelia didn't play. Obviously, I'll perhaps saying all our love and support to Tim Membry. Obviously being the laid out. With like, sounds like a horrendous scenario. So sending our love and prayers for Blue Braun, obviously both of us to Tim Membry and his family, of course. But that just sprung to my mind. Stephen Cornelia, of course, being a laid out. I thought whether or not that was going to affect them, but like Josh Kelly stepped up, Lockie Whitfield stepped up, Lockie Ash stepped up. They were just so clean, especially in transition. They just did a lot right. And I mean, can we speak about Josh Kelly for a minute? Because I just think he's recaptured that 2019 form, like 2018 form. Like, he is so good, man. So good. Yeah. So clean.
I was right near the pocket, like the 50 of that goal, that like you could just see it. Like, that was just like, yeah. It was one of those goals where you're like, okay, it's done. Like, this is it.
If he's doing that, and I know that's well within his repertoire. So it's not as if Kieran Briggs has started slotting him for 55 on the run, but it's like, okay, Kelly's on. This is going to be tough. I mean, Josh has put Toby Green in the chat as well. He obviously kicked a couple. They went with that Wilkie matchup, and Toby Green kind of did well to stifle him. Anything like, I just think the Giants are just too good on the day, unfortunately, because I want a St Kilda win. I've got a very close friend of mine who's a St Kilda supporter, so I was rooting for them, but I couldn't. It was just one of those things where it's like the Giants just were too well structured, too defensively solid. And even when the Saints had a couple of flurries late, especially before the second quarter or at the end of the second quarter, they kicked a couple. Before the third quarter as well, the 3/4 time, I should say, they kicked a couple. The Giants were just able to just hold them and just weren't able really stifle the momentum quickly.
Well, I was surprised St Kilda performed as badly as they did, purely because people say, the MCG factor, but RSCA is very similar, like dimensions to what the MCG is. So I thought it would suit them, if anything, and they'd be able to play it really well, and didn't seem to happen. But I want to touch on a St Kilda player that I've loved watching, that I thought did really well. Cooper Sharman, he's been very good. He was lifting them. He lifted him on their shoulders at times, and obviously the likes of Jack Steele as well. But he was one that you just didn't expect to play as well as he did, and he did it, and he did his job really well. Doesn't let the occasion get to him, and he played well.
Yeah,
it's impressive.
Yeah, it was very good. Quick wrap up of the Saints season. I think they're in a similar position to the Swans. Can't be maybe a little bit different. Can be a little bit disheartened with the performance, because I felt they could have maybe shut up a little bit better. But in the grand scheme of the season, I think a big tick for them. Yeah.
Yes.
Massive tick. Yeah. One of those things. Moving on to a game which we both watched intently, I'm sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Real notepad out, AFL stats.
Look, this was my fourth game of football on the Saturday, and I just, after half time, I was like, okay, we know where it's heading. We'll leave it at that. Well done, Brisbane. It was just... Yeah.
Port not at the races.
Clinical, but expected.
Yeah, I think we both kind of went into this game thinking that Port should, or the Brisbane should win this quite comfortably, should control the game from quite early on, and they did. Quick side note for the game: what is with key forwards and not being able to kick goals? Todd Marshall
That was
decided
really bad.
that was bad. Like,
Yeah.
and Todd Marshall was a pretty good. Todd Marshall was a pretty good kick. That's right. It's not like Harry McCoy, Travis Cloak, or a player like this who's notoriously inaccurate and wayward in front of goal. Todd Marshall was a pretty good set shot, and he had two, which I almost marked at the pub in the precinct. Like, come on.
Yeah, but it would have been frustrating as well if you're a Port supporter. I mean, they were doing really well. I thought, like,
Up until half time, especially.
Yeah, without Dixon in that team to play that well, to dominate. I mean, whether it would have made a difference. I think, especially at the start when they were squandering those chances, I think at least if they had sort of got the gap open a little bit on Brisbane and sort of got to a 2 or 3 goal margin, they would have given themselves a much better chance. I just think not that Brisbane were also not clinical for the start, but when have we seen a team? I mean, not the team hasn't won at the Gabba there, but usually if you're behind, you're never going to give yourself a chance. Like, Brisbane put you away very quickly, and that's about it. So it just wasn't.
Yeah, Port hit the front once throughout the game. It was when Connor Rosie smacked that goal from 55 in the second quarter. They're up by 2 points. So, and then obviously they copped the next 3 goals of the quarter and went down at half time by 16, and then they kind of just ran away with it. In the end, the Lions they had a 6-goal lead heading into the last change. So I think Port were definitely in the game. Port were definitely in the game, especially in that first half, and it was those wasteful chances that they just if they just capitalised, I feel like it could have been differently. I still think Brisbane would have won. I still think Brisbane would have eventually come over the top of them and suffocated them in the way that they do a lot of teams at the Gabba, with that just relentlessness, especially going forward. It's frightening at times, right? It was one of those things. I mean, good to see the likes of Cam Rayner step up. He kicked 3. Jasper Fletcher stepped up, kicked 3. Jay Danaher kicked 5, and then obviously Ollie Lord for the power. In the absence of Dixon, Marshall not being able to kick any, he kicked 4. I say Marshall not being able to kick any, he kicked 2, but in terms of being wasteful, Ollie Lord stepping up. So a weird game for Port, because they can take a lot out of it in a sense, but also disappointing, especially with, like, Dersman didn't have a great game. I think that's been quite well publicised, and just around the ground, especially in that last quarter, they just got torn a new one. Especially in that front half for Port, for Brisbane, Port's defence were all at sea.
Yeah, I think it would be a bit deflating though. Like, that type of loss is not ideal in week 1, and it's. I mean, we might as well just segue our preview now. Port GWS, and where this leaves Port, because I feel like they're in a bad position purely because they know they have to go through Collingwood at the MCG, a team they haven't beaten this year at home or away. And you're coming up against a GWS team who has literally nothing to lose, because they could lose by 80 points and no one would care, in terms of, like, you'd still back them next season. Yeah, you'd just say, okay.
It's a tick for them, regardless.
Oh, is this danger game? Like, is this full on, like, they could end? Because I just don't see a world in which GWS win, and it's not based on GWS. It's the crowd. I think, like, that's.
Well, you say that, and we did discover something pretty.
But Giants
about the crowd.
Yeah, well, I think Port equal Collingwood with the crowd. I think you go there and it's somewhere you don't want to be. And I know when we look at GWS and their road record, terrific, right? But they did just lose to Port all of, like, 5 weeks ago over there.
Quite convincingly.
They beat Adelaide, but they were also losing quite a lot of that game, and they had a big last quarter.
5 in the last year.
I just don't think they can overcome the crowd factor. Like, that will play such a massive part in Port winning, because I think GWS can win around the ground, be a great midfield battle. Like that contest will be ridiculous. But come crunch time, look, a Port Adelaide crowd compared to a St Kilda crowd at not even a home ground,
Yeah, no.
it's quite a different thing. I just can't see a world in which GWS go and win over there. And it's not because they're not talented enough. It's literally like my reason is the crowd, and I'll just stick by that.
Yeah. I look. You raise great points. I think there was a clip floating around. GWS released that Tom Green 11.
Yeah, that was good.
Anytime, any place, 11
This
venues.
smoke, yeah, we want this
free smoke wherever you want it. I think that's the coldest thing to ever come out of that club. That's free smoke wherever you want it. I think that's great. I think that's so good. Just sort of side note, but I think that's kind of a. I know it's a joke. How we like whatever. That was quite funny, but like 11 venues is impressive, right? I don't think it will ever be replicated because obviously they travelled to TIO and they did gather around as well. They went to Tassie, so they've won. They won Adelaide before this year, which is a big mental tick, I think, for them. I think they're going to beat them in the midfield battle. I think their defence, Sam Taylor and Jack Buckley are really good. And I think off half-back as well, I don't think Port have the pressure inside 50 to kind of counter Ash, Whitfield, these guys running off half-back. I think their forward line can be a little bit wasteful at times. Riccardi and Hogan can be profligate and can be a little bit inconsistent. Obviously, Toby Green's going to have a big game, whether he plays permanent forward, whether he pushes into the midfield as well. Who knows? I think it'll be won quite early. I think we're going to see, by one quite early, I mean, if Port can get a run on early, I don't see GWS coming back. But if GWS can keep it within relative kind of closeness in a way, I think that they're definitely within a shot. Definitely within a shot. What do you? Maybe a little bit question without notice. Who's a player that you think could really blow this game? Could really blow this game open?
Blow this game open. I look to a Finn Callan because love watching him play since the start. He's just, again, one you don't expect. Like you're not going to target him purely because he just doesn't have the games to his name. He's a great. We know the potential, but based on games played, you don't. You just sort of have him. He's there. He's good, but he's one difference maker. That's the name I look towards.
Yeah, I think for Port, it's going to have to be. I think if Jason Horne-Francis is going to announce himself as a Port player, it's going to be this weekend. So there's that. Could be him, but then again, Rosie and Butters both played quite well on the weekend, and their first, not their first home final, but their first home final where they're both kind of at the peak of not peak of their powers, but where they own the midfield now. Like there's no Boak, Wines has dropped off, Drew's dropped off, so their first home final where they're the two kind of kingpins in that midfield, maybe could be the real difference maker in my eyes. But I looked at Toby Green and I think it's ready for him to just kick six, isn't it?
Yeah, I couldn't disagree there. Especially, well, you sort of touched on if Port get a run on early, but I think if Giants get a 6-goal first quarter, this is every chance of and we know Port struggled mentally at home come, big finals. This is an elimination game similar to the prelims. Bulldogs did it, and they finished it quickly. It was done and over within the first quarter. So it could be a small possibility for the Giants because, that's the one thing with them. They can struggle against those really hostile crowds like Collingwood and Port, but they can also put about 5 goals on you in the space of 10 minutes. And so, they can do it, yeah. But then the other team might come back into it, but they've done it. So,
yeah.
Could go either way in that sense. Tip. Yeah, Port. No, see, I think they beat him really convincingly. I really think the crowd is that, it's just that clear cut. I say Port by 32.
I think I might go the other way. I'm going to go Giants. Obviously I know how higher on the Giants bandwagon I've been this year.
Yeah.
I went against them last week, probably against my better judgment. I'll go Giants by 15. But it'll be a kick after the siren. So it'll be 8. No, that's not it. It'll be 9.
Yes, yeah.
It'll be 9, and then Cal Brown will get out the back, or Toby Bedford will get out the back and kick one on the siren. There you go.
Yeah.
So just to wrap up, Carlton, Melbourne. You've got Melbourne by
10. And you had Carlton by 15, I think.
Carlton by 7.
7.
And I've got Giants by 15. You've got Port by 32.
Yeah.
So interesting games. We'll definitely be here next week regardless. We could either be very depressed or speaking about our team in a prelim, which is just fuck. Yeah, I don't even know how we're in this situation, but we are. Thank you all very much for watching. Thank you very much for sticking around. The engagement has been very, very much, very greatly appreciated. Nathan, thank you very much for joining me once again. And a little bit early. 5 minutes early. Why not? Give you 5 minutes to rest up before the BAW show. So stick around for both Kira and Shan, and I think Terry's on. I don't know. I think he might be on. So yeah, stick around for that. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you follow both of us on Twitter, r_y_stammer at Nath Seppi. See you guys next week. Make sure you subscribe and like all the other good stuff. Goodbye.